narcissist doesn't fear you because you caused them pain. They fear you because you've stepped beyond their control. It's not your departure that stirs their anger, but the fact that you didn't glance back, didn't apologize, and didn't rely on them to define your identity. In their constructed reality, that's a staggering blow. Narcissists don't operate as emotionally typical individuals do. They don't shape their self-image from within, but rather construct it from how others react to them. Every compliment, each admiring gaze, and every tear you once shed became evidence of their influence. So when you withdraw, go silent, cease reacting, stop pleading, or even hating, you transform into something they can no longer manipulate. And that's when their unraveling begins. You may assume they've moved on, that they're fine, happy, perhaps even thriving with someone new. But what you're seeing is nothing more than a hastily assembled facade born from desperation. When a narcissist loses their reflective source, they don't just mourn a relationship, they lose the distorted identity they've leaned on their entire lives. You were the one who offered a chance for change. You forgave, stayed, and tried to mend something that wasn't even yours to fix. But in time, you saw that staying only erased you further. The more you gave, the more they consumed, until finally, you did what they never anticipated. You walked away, quietly, without a spectacle. That departure sent them into an internal crisis, because for a narcissist, what they dread most isn't the end itself, it's the loss of dominance. And you, the one they were sure would always return, became the first to face them with a searing truth. They no longer had any hold on you. They'll never speak it aloud, never acknowledge that you were different. But deep inside, they can't forget you. Not out of love, but because you were the one person who truly reflected their hidden self, even the aspects they tried to suppress. And with your absence, that reflection has vanished, rendering them invisible even to themselves. In this video, we'll unpack the psychological depths a narcissist descends into after you leave. Not to stroke your ego, but to remind you that your choice to leave wasn't weakness, it was strength. A wake-up call, and the first crack in a long-standing system of control. If you've ever wondered whether they think of you, whether they hurt, or why your silence provokes so much fury, the answers lie here, and you deserve to know them. Stay with us until the end of this video, because this truth won't just help you heal, it will help you remain firm on the brave path you've chosen. The path of freedom, authenticity, and no longer outsourcing your self-worth to someone else. A narcissist doesn't resent you for having loved them, they don't even resent you for leaving. What infuriates them most is that you saw through their facade and had the audacity to walk away without justification, without a script. That kind of self-assurance fractures something deep within them, the part that believed it could bend others' emotions at will. To a narcissist, love isn't connection, it's power. As long as you stayed, they had a role to play. They could wound you, then save you, just to reassert dominance. But when you left in silence, without demanding closure or falling into their narrative, it wasn't just a breakup, it was a complete reversal of control. And in their psychological makeup, that reversal is unforgivable. Their rage toward you doesn't come from heartbreak. It's a reflexive defense of the ego. They despise you because you dared to deny them control, because you stopped acting as their mirror, no longer affirming the carefully crafted illusion they depend on. What enrages them the most is your independence, the fact that you no longer needed them, a truth they've never dared admit about anyone. They may spin tales about you, claim you were the problem, too sensitive, or emotionally immature. But that's all ego armor. They need to recast the story not for your benefit, but to protect themselves from the truth. They lost someone who once loved them deeply, but who refused to be used any longer. Keep in mind, narcissists don't grieve in the ways emotionally healthy people do. They don't sit with their pain or reflect on the relationship. What they experience is ego injury, the rage of losing control. A part of their artificial self-image has been shattered, and the one who dealt the blow was you, the once compliant partner, now a threat to everything they believe about their dominance. That's why, even after you leave, they continue watching you. Outwardly, they act unfazed, but behind the scenes, they manipulate narratives, recasting events to portray themselves as the victim and you as the villain. But none of that comes from strength. It all stems from fear. Fear of being seen as you saw them, of others catching a glimpse of the same truth you uncovered. If the mask slips in public, their entire identity collapses. You did the unthinkable. You reclaimed your power. You stopped participating in the emotional chaos they curated. You didn't fall apart. Instead, you grew stronger. Your strength, your peace, your refusal to react is the most threatening thing to them. Their contempt isn't evidence that you were wrong. It's confirmation that you were right. You became the one force they couldn't manipulate, the one presence that now lives beyond their control. Narcissists don't exist as solidly as they pretend to. Their identity isn't grounded in self-worth. It's built through others' feedback. They require someone like you to reflect an idealized image of importance and superiority. And when you walked away, silently and resolutely, you didn't just leave a relationship, you removed their most vital mirror. And for them, that's worse than heartbreak. They fear not the loss of love, but the loss of the reflection that made them feel real. Without your gaze, your reactions, your emotional engagement, they spiral. In the early days, they'll try to fill the void, latching onto someone new, not out of love, but out of desperation for supply. They'll mimic the cycle: flattery, love bombing, the perfect mask. But nothing replaces you. No one reflects them as you did. No one stays after seeing their darkest parts the way you once did. The new person is a dim echo. Secretly, they compare. They remember your eyes, your silence, how you saw past the illusion and touched something fragile. And that memory shakes them. With each failed attempt to rebuild the old reflection, they sink further into inner chaos. A narcissist doesn't know who they are without external validation. Your presence once reassured them of their worth. Without it, they're disoriented. They might stalk your online presence, ask around about you, or send ambiguous signals, but it's not really you they seek. It's the feeling of existence you once gave them. Without your reflection, they're invisible, even to themselves. That's when the real collapse begins. Not outwardly, not with screaming or drama, but internally, quietly. All their tactics, stonewalling, guilt-tripping, playing the victim, cease to work. You've stopped responding, stopped engaging, stepped off their stage. With no one left to control, the narcissist faces a truth more brutal than any confrontation. They're not even in control of themselves. Their emotional world begins to implode. Behind the smiles and filtered selfies, the facade crumbles. Their face, once full of practiced expressions, begins to falter. They may fall silent or become chaotically loud, both signs of inner disorientation. They no longer know what role to play. When you remove yourself from their stage, they are left with the only audience that truly terrifies them: themselves. And what they see is a void, empty, cold, unfillable. Alone, they whisper to the mirror, "Who am I without someone to control?" But there's no answer, because they've never built a self of their own. Every manipulation they used was merely a way to feel powerful, and now there's no one left to manipulate. Their pain isn't that of heartbreak, it's the agony of a collapsing false self. This pain the narcissist experiences isn't the sorrow of losing someone they truly loved, it's the breakdown of a carefully engineered system of control. It's not your absence as a partner that devastates them, but the loss of the mirror you once were. You didn't just represent affection, you symbolized validation, a constant reminder that they mattered. In your prolonged silence, they come to realize something they never wanted to face. They never truly had you. What they possessed was your reaction, your energy, your emotional presence. And now that even your silence isn't a tactic but a genuine detachment, they find there's no longer a path back to you. Every door they once used to manipulate, every button they used to press, has been permanently disabled. For the first time, the narcissist is forced to sit within the ruins of the very structure they built to feel powerful. And that collapse isn't dramatic. It's quiet, internal, and all-consuming. Once your silence becomes not a strategy but a state of being, every manipulation they attempt begins to echo into emptiness. There is no audience left for their performance. No one to threaten with abandonment, no one to guilt into responding. You have stepped completely out of their reach. And in this stillness, a new kind of suffering emerges, one they've never learned how to manage. Not grief for you, but a loss of the illusion of control. Because you were their last connection to power. When the narcissist loses everyone they can manipulate, the mask they wear starts to crumble from within. Their polished exterior, cool, composed, seemingly unfazed, starts to falter. Not with visible breakdowns, but through subtle, haunting signs. A forced smile, a hollow laugh, a growing emptiness in their gaze. What begins as a private unraveling soon grows into a consuming identity crisis. But unlike before, no one notices. There's no outburst, no visible chaos, just a person quietly dissolving in solitude, eaten away by the realization that none of their tactics work anymore. They've spent their entire life running from pain by controlling others, but now, with no one left to control, they are finally caught in the web they spun for others. Their emotional collapse doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds slowly, subtly. They start behaving inconsistently, sometimes eerily silent, sometimes explosively loud. Each extreme reveals their confusion. They don't know who to be anymore. The hero, the abandoned one, the enlightened survivor. None of the roles they try to assume fit anymore, because without you, their stage has gone dark. You've left, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically. The script no longer applies. The only observer left is themselves, forced to witness the unraveling of their own illusions. And in that silence, the question they've spent a lifetime avoiding begins to echo. Who am I without someone to manipulate? This internal chaos breeds a dangerous kind of quiet depression, one that no one sees. They won't admit their vulnerability, won't speak of the unraveling. But in their most private moments, they feel the abyss. They begin to realize there's nothing left, not even themselves. You were the last audience they had, and now with your departure, they're left with a reflection that no longer exists. No one to validate them, no one to affirm their significance. All their efforts to elicit reactions now fall flat, like hands grasping at smoke. This pain isn't about missing you. It's about missing the power your presence once gave them. And so, when every form of manipulation fails and the silence from you becomes undeniable, the narcissist arrives at a pivotal crossroads. One path offers transformation, the difficult, often painful journey of rebuilding a true self through honesty and inner work. The other path, which most choose, is a return to the same old pattern, dressed in a new costume. This path is easier, more familiar. It requires no accountability, only a new supply to replace you, someone fresh, unaware, and easier to mold. And though the mask may look different, more spiritual, more polished, even more self-aware, it's still a mask, a more sophisticated version of the same deception. Most narcissists will choose that path, not because they're beyond hope, but because they've never learned how to sit with their own pain without placing the blame on someone else. From childhood, they were conditioned to escape discomfort through manipulation, charm, and performance. They've never been taught how to feel something without trying to control it, so they return to the cycle. They seek someone new, someone who will mirror back the illusion they crave. But even they, deep down, know a painful truth. You are irreplaceable. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. You saw through them. You understood them more than they wanted to be understood, and that terrified them, even as it made them need you more. With the new person, they'll recycle everything they once did with you. Lavish affection, grand promises, over-the-top kindness. But the performance won't last. It will move faster, be more chaotic, carry less depth, because they're not as strong as they once were. Their desperation has increased, and their energy for maintaining the illusion has decreased. They're running, not just from you, but from the truth of themselves. As time passes, the narcissist's new relationships begin to unravel more quickly. Each one becomes shorter, more hollow, and increasingly chaotic. With every failure to replicate the connection they once had with you, their desperation grows. And with that desperation, their efforts intensify. But no matter how hard they try, they can't use another person to fill the deep, shapeless void within themselves, because they don't understand what it truly is. They're not searching for love, they're chasing a reflection, a confirmation that they still matter. But they don't realize that connection, genuine connection, requires a real, stable self, something they never stop to develop. At this stage, they face two possible directions. One is to continue spinning within these destructive patterns, clinging to each new relationship like a lifeline. The other is the far more difficult path, to confront the painful truth that their entire identity has been built on falsehoods. Very few ever choose the second option. Only when they hit absolute rock bottom, after every illusion has shattered, after every relationship has turned to dust, does a flicker of awareness sometimes appear. It's then perhaps that they might ask themselves, what have I become? Who am I without all these personas? And in that rare, fragile moment, a deep transformation could begin. But that path requires a level of humility most narcissists were never taught to embrace. Instead, many opt to reconstruct their mask once again, this time making it even more refined. They may become the wise one, the spiritual one, the empath, the healed person. But these are just new costumes designed to avoid looking at the truth. It's not growth, it's evasion. And with every new mask, they move further away from the possibility of real healing. They remain emotionally detached, existing in relationships that mimic connection but lack substance. They appear full of life, yet they're haunted by an emptiness no applause or attention can fill. Like a puppet animated by old scripts, they keep repeating the same performance with less conviction each time. At this point, there's something important you must remember. If you once tried to help them, held on hoping for change, gave them chance after chance until it finally broke you, that wasn't a mistake. It wasn't your failure. It was the limit of what they could receive. You can't rescue someone who doesn't want to be rescued. You can't lead someone to truth when they're committed to a lie. And your decision to walk away wasn't giving up, it was waking up. You became the proof that someone can choose self-respect over illusion. And that kind of strength is rare. The painful irony of a relationship with a narcissist is that the more you heal, the more they fall apart. The more quietly you move on, the more unsteady they become. And the more authentically you live, the more they're exposed for the falsehood they've hidden behind. They don't fear losing you out of love. They fear it because you were the last person still reflecting back the image they needed to feel real. When you stop talking about them, stop checking in, stop posting ambiguous captions they could read into, that's when they feel it most. That's when it becomes undeniable. They're no longer part of your world. But true healing is more than silence. It's when silence is no longer necessary, when you no longer need to prove anything, when peace becomes your natural state, when you no longer see them as a wound to be healed but as a chapter that's closed. That shift is what flips their entire psychological structure upside down. They were used to the version of you that waited, hoped, and responded. They believed one word, one signal, one moment of attention would pull you back. But now nothing works. You don't ask questions, you don't seek answers. You no longer need closure because you've already created it within. And that unsettles them more than anything else ever could. When you post a photo, not to show them anything but simply because you feel good, they feel threatened. When you laugh, not to prove you're happy, but because you are, they feel themselves fading from relevance. Your peace becomes a mirror they can no longer look into, because it shows them exactly what they've lost and can never recreate. They start to vanish, not just from your life, but from the illusion they had of their own. You didn't just walk away, you removed yourself from the stage entirely. You stopped playing your part in the story they were trying to script. And in doing so, you stripped away their perceived control. That, more than any angry confrontation, is what they can never recover from. Because they never wanted truth. They only ever wanted power. And now, without your attention, your reaction, or your validation, they're left with the one thing they were most afraid of: irrelevance. When you choose to walk away without giving them the last word, without needing to hear "I'm sorry" or "you were right," you take back your power. You refuse to play the game. You don't need applause. You don't need witnesses. Your healing isn't loud, it's steady, grounded, real. It's in how you treat yourself now, in how you sleep more peacefully, in how you wake up without that familiar weight on your chest. That's the victory they'll never understand, and the peace they'll never reach. Narcissists will never truly grasp the calm strength that comes from genuine healing. To them, every ending needs to be dramatic, either a triumphant victory, a desperate plea, or a twisted revenge. But you offered none of that. You stepped away with quiet resolve, no final words, no accusations, no spectacle. And that, more than any emotional outburst, is what lingers with them. Because the truth is, they don't seek closure, they seek control. They don't want you to move on. They want you to orbit around the memory of them, even in silence. But your silence wasn't about power, it was about peace. You didn't walk away to win, you walked away to live. You didn't stay quiet to punish, you stayed quiet because there was nothing left to say. And in doing so, you denied them the very thing they craved most, confirmation that they still held space in your mind. True freedom doesn't come from watching them collapse or needing them to confess their faults. It comes from reaching a place within yourself where none of that matters anymore. When your self-worth no longer depends on their regret, their apology, or their validation, you've won in a way they'll never understand. Because not everyone can live without needing a storyline to explain their pain. Not everyone can walk away from chaos and build peace with nothing but their own strength. But you did. If you're still here, still breathing, still walking forward, still healing, then you've already done what they never expected. You survived not because you were cold or uncaring, but because you finally cared enough about yourself to stop bleeding for someone who never intended to heal you. And that's what they'll never admit, that your love was real, but your strength was even more so. They will never see your silence for what it truly was. Not bitterness, not manipulation, but liberation. You didn't leave because you gave up. You left because you woke up. You didn't stay silent to appear powerful. You were powerful, and that's why you had nothing left to prove. In the end, you didn't just escape their control, you dismantled it. Without fanfare, without vengeance, you simply stopped needing them to make sense of your life. That was the moment the curtain closed on their performance. And that's what they fear most. Not being hated, but being forgotten. Not being fought with, but being irrelevant, because they've never known how to exist without someone else reflecting them back to themselves. While you are now building a life rooted in authenticity, connection, and inner peace, they are still chasing mirrors, seeking reflections, not relationships. They're haunted not by your anger, but by your absence. Not by what you said, but by everything you chose not to say. You are no longer their supply, and that loss is far more threatening than love ever was. You've become something they can't reach, can't manipulate, can't define. You've become a living symbol of everything they couldn't destroy: growth, healing, and truth. Every step you take forward, every boundary you reinforce, every moment you live fully and freely is a silent reminder to them that the game is over, and they lost the one thing they didn't believe could ever leave for good. But the most important thing is this: none of this was ever about them. It was always about you. Your freedom, your peace, your journey. You don't need a beautiful ending for a painful story. You don't need applause for your healing. What you need, and what you now have, is yourself. The self that emerged from the fire stronger, wiser, and finally whole. No validation required, no explanation needed, no audience necessary. You've written a new chapter, one where they no longer get to be a character. And that, to a narcissist, is the most terrifying truth of all. What are your views on this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I will personally read all of your comments. And if you seriously want to level up in life, don't forget to show some love by hitting the like and subscribe button. Stay strong. Until next time.